Volvo's latest Android OS has now been on the market for 3 years. When it first launched, I thoroughly explored the various aspects of the Android OS. My conclusion was that the Android OS was significantly lacking compared to the previous Census OS. But still, since it's based on Android, which is known for its expandability and compatibility, I held on to some hope and expectation that these shortcomings would be addressed in the future. For example, the latest Volvo models still come equipped with side ultrasonic sensors, but the park pilot assist feature is missing from the Android OS system. The car's system was upgraded, but an existing feature was omitted. I don't think I've ever seen this happen before in the car business pattern. However, I tried to understand it, thinking that the Android OS was still incomplete and that it would be updated later. Now, nearly 3 years later, there has been many updated to the Android OS. However, most of these have focused on fixing system bugs related to the vehicle's driving functions, with only 2 or 3 positive updates that drivers can actually feel. In this video, I will once again summarize the area in Volvo's Android OS that still urgently need improvement as a kind of mid-term evaluation. First, one of the top 5 issues I previously mentioned that urgently needed improvement in the Android OS was the inconvenient transition between pilot assist and adaptive cruise control functions while driving. However, about a year ago, this was finally improved through an update. Now, you can easily switch between pilot assist and adaptive cruise control while driving using the right arrow button. But if they were going to change it, I don't understand why they didn't just unify the usage by making the left button for adaptive cruise control and the right button for pilot assist like in the previous Census system. Does Volvo have plans to assign some function to that left button? I don't expect that. So instead of leaving it empty, they should have unified some usage with the Census method to avoid wasting such an important button. For example, Hyundai Kia vehicle have a feature that allows for independent steering assist activation. The driver controls acceleration and braking, while the system only assists with staying centered in the lane. I found this quite useful, given that there are many complaints about the love and jerky auto acceleration and deceleration of Volvo's adaptive cruise control. Such a feature could have been beneficial. For convenience, I will refer to the button with the page icon as the favorites and the circle icon as the confirm button. In the previous Census version, this favorite button allowed you to easily access fuel efficiency, media list, call logs, and destination history. Particularly, if you wanted to call back someone you just spoke with, you could do it instantly with just a few pressed button with your thumb, which was very convenient. But in the Android version, the favorites button only controls the on and off function of the navigation screen on the driver's display. Because of this, all the favorites you could access with the Census must now be managed directly on the center monitor or via voice commands. While some users may prefer this, but I found it more convenient to use my fingers rather than voice command. For instance, let me compare process of redialing a person you recently called.
성수 안정현 과장에게 전화.
성수 안정현 과장에게 전화할게요.
It's frustrating that a button conveniently located for easy access only serves to turn the navigation screen on and off in the Android OS. Most car manufacturers put a lot of thought into designing their center screens to allow drivers to select from a variety of useful information. However, Volvo seems to be underutilizing that space, limiting it mostly to the navigation screen. And as for the confirm button, it performs various functions depending on the situation. In census, it was used for muting in normal situations, answering calls,
여보세요? 네.
hanging up a call,
수고하세요.
네.
confirming driver's alert, and selecting options in some settings. In Android OS, it performs almost identical functions to Census. However, one key difference is that in normal situations, it's assigned to display fuel efficiency information instead of muting. How often do you check fuel efficiency? In the Android settings, you can choose to display fuel efficiency information constantly on the screen with either TM or TA, so it can be shown in a corner of the screen. It's strange enough that there is no clear indicator to distinguish between TM and TA, but the fact that you have to press this confirm button just to see the accumulated mileage. Moreover, I will never see numbers displayed this way before. TM values can be reset by the drivers at any time, while TA resets automatically after the car has been off for more than 4 hours. You can reset TM either by holding the reset switch on the left lever as before, or also available in the fuel efficiency screen, giving you 2 ways to reset TM, which is also puzzling. The fuel efficiency screen has seen some slightly improvement. In the early Android version, after bringing up the fuel efficiency screen with the confirm button, you had to navigate to the X page first and then press the confirm button to close it, or use the favorite button to close it. Now, you can open and close it intuitively with just the confirm button. When I first saw this old layout, I wondered if they would eventually add shortcuts to other functions between the fuel efficiency page and the X page, but it turned out to be my reckless expectation. This marks the second noticeable positive update after the ACC and PA transition button update. In all the Volvos, there are 3 display styles: elegance, eco, performance were provided as a standard, and all design models offered a blue-toned elegance mode with a distinctive startup ceremony to add a touch of emotional satisfaction for those who purchased the more expensive design models. This was a good example of how to effectively utilize a digital display. In the Census version of the new models, a total of 4 styles were offered, but they differed only in color and font, lacking any real impact. Even the all-design models didn't have a unique design in digital display. However, as the instrument cluster transitioned to a digital display, the gauge would shift to the side with the navigation came on, creating a nice real graphic effect. In the Android OS, there are no display themes and only one style is offered. In the early version, there was at least a similar graphic effect when the navigation screen appeared, but in the latest version, it just pops in and out with no animation. It feels like the graphics are regressing. These days, most vehicle instrument cluster are digital displays. Manufacturers invest significant effort into designing them to provide drivers with visual satisfaction and convey a variety of driving information. But Volvo seems to be failing to leverage the advantage of a digital display. In the census system, the time gap indicator was large and easy to see, even in older models where it was displayed right in the center. But in the Android OS, the symbol is too small, the lines are thin, and they are tightly spaced, making it much harder to read. It's difficult to tell at a glance whether you are at 2, 3, or 4 bars except for 1 and 5 bars. People tend to develop a preference for certain time gap settings depending on speed and traffic when using ACC functions. The fact that you have to adjust it up or down from 1 or 5 bars. Is it just my poor eyesight, or is this really an issue? With sensors, you could adjust the cabin temperature in 0.5 degree increment. You might wonder if such precision was necessary, but that's how it was. However, in Android, this has been changed to 1 degree increment, and the upcoming EX series will be the same. But the hardware for the real temperature display panel is the same as the one used in sensors, so it still shows a meaningless decremental point. In the early version of Android, the touch hold time on the temperature button was too short, leading to input the temperature would jump to the maximum or minimum value. I tested it again in the latest version to see if this time had been adjusted. As of now, the only Volvo models with rear seat ventilation is the S90 since 2022, but even 3 years later, you still can't control the rear seat ventilation from the front monitor. At least you can do it via voice command, which is a small relief.
오른쪽 뒷좌석 통풍 시트 켜줘.
뒷좌석 시트 통풍을 켤게요.
안녕 벤츠.
Looking at recent Mercedes models,
운전석 창문 열어줘.
알겠어요.
Kia vehicles,
오른쪽 후석 창문 반만 내려줘.
후석 오른쪽 창문을 반만 열게요.
모든 창문 닫아줘.
창문을 모두 닫을게요.
in the previous Sensors system, you could adjust the volume of various functions from the setting menu, complete with the sample sound. But the more straightforward and intuitive method is to adjust the volume directly when the alert sounds. This would immediately reflect in the settings. This was also the case in all the Volvos. Now, let's look at the Android OS. While this intuitive volume adjustment method remains, but parking sensor volume is an exception. You can't adjust it directly. Even you go into the overall volume settings though, the parking sensor volume isn't listed there. It's hidden within the camera screen settings. If the sensor volume is too low, you have to stop and move the gear out of reverse position and adjust it without the aid of a sample sound. This also applies to other volumes in the overall settings menu. Why couldn't they continue with the well-designed setup from the older Volvo's 10 sensors? I believe that UI and UX design, which refers to the configuration and structure of user interfaces, can only be optimized through extensive experience using the car in various environments over a long period. I believe that also a car performance can be quickly assessed by an experienced driver, even in a short amount of time. However, the comfort of the seats and the usability of various features are aspects that can only be truly understood after long hours or extended drives. That's why I think it's essential for the design of these elements to be informed by experience of those who develop the vehicle along with active feedback from real-world testing. Unfortunately, Volvo's current Android OS seems to fail short in these areas. I believe simplicity doesn't mean removing functionality. Ahead, it seems that the new UI being developed for Volvo's upcoming electric vehicles will offer a more visually appealing interface. However, with the removal of many physical buttons, there are already concerns about increased operational complexity.
Menus
I mean,
deep in this
Yeah, that's not great.
one. Mhm.
I don't love that. Like they could use a few more buttons. This is the only button in the entire car.
Right.
There is one button and it's right there. It's beautiful, but we need a few more things here. So that I will say I don't love having to go into here to like change my mirrors or set my steering wheel. And I think they think people do that before they drive, and we don't.
No, we always adjust like while we're driving
Right?
and like for the different types of
It's
driving.
true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
I'm with you on
sad
this.
but true. Sad but true.
But you have to select front or rear with these two buttons. So it's same as like ID4 or EX30, and that's really a problem. And I had dinner with the interior designer of this car, and I think she now realizes it's a problem, and she doesn't want to talk to me anymore because I complained so much about this. Anyway, the point's been made to Volvo. Unfortunately, this is the way it is. It's a pain in the ass. It sucks. And you have basically two of the...
even though Volvo's Android OS has now been around for 3 years, given that this format will be phased out with the introduction of the new EX series, it's unlikely that we'll see the return of features like Park Pilot Assist or improvements to the areas where the current system falls short. As for final noticeable improvement, here is a sample. The oil gauge in all the Volvos looked like this. During the census era, it was presented like this. Then, in the early version of the Android OS, the oil gauge was designed like this. However, in the latest version, it has been updated to look like this.